is to be specific, and it is to be uniform. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have been selected and sworn as the jury to try the case of the state of Florida versus Donna Adelson. This is a criminal case. Donna Adelson is charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and solicitation to commit first-degree murder. The definition of these offenses will be explained to you later in this trial. The state's charging document, which is called an indictment, is not evidence, and it is not to be considered by you as any proof of guilt. It is my responsibility to explain the law to you. It is your solemn responsibility to determine if the state proved its accusations beyond a reasonable doubt against Donna Adelson in accordance with the law that I will provide to you. Thus, the province of the jury and the province of the court are well defined, and they do not overlap. This is one of the fundamental principles of our system of justice. Before proceeding further, it will be helpful if you understand how a trial is conducted. At the beginning of the trial, the attorneys will have an opportunity, if they wish, to make an opening statement. The opening statement gives the attorneys a chance to tell you what evidence they believe will be presented during the trial. What the lawyers say is not evidence, and you are not to consider it as such. Following the opening, witnesses will be called to testify under oath. They will be examined and cross-examined by the attorneys. Documents and other exhibits may also be produced as evidence. After the evidence has been presented, the court will give you instructions on the law. The attorneys will then have the opportunity to make their closing arguments. Following the closing arguments by the attorneys, the court will conclude with final instructions. After the final instructions are given, the alternate jurors will be released, and you will then retire to consider your verdict in this matter. You should not form any definite or fixed opinions on the merits of this case until you have heard all the evidence, the argument of the lawyers, and the instruction on the law that I will provide to you. Until that time, you should not discuss the case amongst yourselves. Your verdict must be based solely on the evidence or lack of evidence and the law. I now instruct you not to communicate with anyone, including your fellow jurors, about this case. No communication includes no emailing, text messaging, tweeting, blogging, or any other form of communication. You cannot do any research about the case or look up any information about the case. If you become aware of any violation of these rules at all, please notify my courtroom personnel concerning the violation. During the course of the trial, the court may take recesses or breaks, and you will be permitted to separate and go about your affairs, or you'll be returned to the jury room. During these recesses or breaks, you must not discuss the case with anyone, nor permit anyone to say anything to you or in your presence about this case. If anyone attempts to say anything to you or in your presence about this case, please tell him or her that you are on the jury that is trying the case and ask that person to stop. If he or she persists, leave that person at once and immediately report the matter to my bailiff, who will advise me. All cell phones, computers, tablets, or other types of electronic devices must be turned off while you're in the courtroom. Turned off means that the phone or electronic device is actually off and not in a silent or vibrating mode. You may use your devices during any recesses or breaks, but even then, you may not use your cell phones or electronic devices to find out any information about the case or to communicate with anyone about the case or the people that are involved in the case. Do not take photographs, video recordings, or audio recordings of the proceedings or of your fellow jurors. After each recess or break, please double check to make sure your cell phone or electronic device is turned off. At the end of the case, while you are deliberating, you must not communicate with anyone outside of the jury room. You cannot have in the jury room any cell phones, computers, or other electronic devices. If someone needs to contact you in an emergency, the court can receive messages and they will be delivered to you without delay. A contact phone number will be provided to you for this very purpose. The case must be tried by you only on the evidence presented during the trial, in your presence, and in the presence of the defendant, the attorneys, and myself. Jurors must not conduct any investigation of their own. This would include reading newspapers, watching television, using a computer, cell phone, the internet, any electronic device, or any other means at all to get information related to this case or the people and places that are involved in this case. This instruction is going to apply to you whether you're in the courthouse, at home, or any other location until the trial has concluded. You must not visit places that are mentioned in the trial or use the internet to look at maps or pictures to see any place that is discussed during the trial. Jurors must not have discussions of any sort with friends or family members about the case or the people and places involved. So do not let even the closest of family members make comments to you or ask questions about this trial. In this age of electronic communication, I want to stress again that just as you must not talk about this case face-to-face, you must not talk about this case by using an electronic device. You must not use phones, computers, or other electronic devices to communicate. Do not send or accept any messages that are related to this case or your jury service. Do not discuss this case or ask for advice by any means at all, including posting information on an internet website, chat room, or blog. What are the reasons for these rules? These rules are imposed because jurors must decide the case without distraction and only on the evidence presented in the courtroom. If you investigate, research, or make inquiries on your own, I will have no way to make sure the information that you have obtained is actually proper and relevant to this case. The parties likewise have no opportunity to dispute or challenge the accuracy of what you may find. That is contrary to our judicial system, which assures every party the right to ask questions about and challenge the evidence being considered against it and to present argument with respect to that evidence. Any independent investigation by a juror unfairly and improperly prevents the parties from having the opportunity that our judicial system promises. Any juror who violates these restrictions jeopardizes the fairness of the proceedings, and a mistrial could result that would require the entire trial process to start over. A mistrial is a tremendous expense and inconvenience to the parties, the court, and all taxpayers. If you violate these rules, you may be held in contempt of court and face sanctions such as serving time in jail, paying a fine, or potentially both. In every criminal proceeding, a defendant has the absolute right to remain silent. At no time is it the duty of a defendant to prove her innocence. From the exercise of a defendant's right to remain silent, a jury is not permitted to draw any inference of guilt, and the fact that a defendant did not take the witness stand must not influence your verdict in any manner whatsoever. The attorneys are trained in the rules of evidence and trial procedure, and it is their duty to make all objections they believe are proper. When an objection is made, you must not speculate on the reason why it has been made. Likewise, when an objection is sustained or upheld by me, you must not speculate on what might have occurred had the objection not been sustained, nor what a witness might have said had he or she been permitted to answer that question. During the trial, it may be necessary for me to confer with the attorneys out of your hearing to discuss matters that require my consideration alone. It is impossible to predict when such a conference may be required or for how long such a conference may last. When such conferences occur, they will be conducted so as to consume as little of your time as is necessary for a fair and orderly trial of this case. If you would like to take notes during the trial, you may do so. On the other hand, of course, you are not required to take notes if you choose not to. This is going to be an individual choice for each juror. You have been provided with a notepad and pen for your use if you do wish to take notes. Any notes that you take will be for your personal use. However, you are not to remove your notepads from the courtroom. During any recess or break, you are to leave your notepads in your seats. When the trial reconvenes, you will have access to your notepads once again. After you've completed your deliberations in this matter, my bailiff will deliver your notepad.
And I'm Sarah Catherine Dugan. Georgia Kappelman and I are representing the state of Florida in this case. And this is the defendant, Donna Adelson. We see her here at the defense table. And this is how she appeared back in 2014 when this crime occurred 11 years ago. And the reason that we're here today is because this defendant, Donna Adelson, was part of a conspiracy to hire a hitman to kill her former son-in-law, Dan Markel. This murder was set into motion because back in 2014, this defendant's family had a big problem. And the big problem was Dan Markel. And the solution to that problem was the defendant's son, Charlie Adelson. Charlie Adelson was the solution because he had a girlfriend with connections to the type of people who were willing and capable of pointing a gun at a complete stranger and pulling the trigger. The victim in this case, Dan Markel, was known as Danny to his friends and family. He was a loving father to 2 little boys, and he was a highly respected law professor at Florida State University College of Law. Tragically, on July 18th of 2014, Dan Markel was shot in the head in broad daylight in the driveway of his home in the Benton Hills neighborhood here in Tallahassee. The last day of his life began like any other day of his that summer. He woke up, he took his 2 young sons to preschool, and then he went to the gym to work out. After finishing his workout, he returned home. He pulled into his driveway and he opened his garage. But little did he know that throughout his entire routine that morning, he was being followed by 2 hired hitmen who traveled all the way to Tallahassee from Miami for the sole purpose of taking his life. And like something out of a horror movie, when he pulled into his driveway, the killers pulled in right behind him. Moments later, Dan Markel's neighbor heard a gunshot, and he looked out the window and saw a light-colored Toyota Prius back quickly out of Dan Markel's driveway and speed away. The neighbor thought that was very unusual, very suspicious, so he waited a second to see if Dan Markel also backed out of his driveway or came out of his house. And when he didn't see him, the neighbor got, a very funny feeling. And he went over to Dan Markel's open garage to see if there was anything wrong. And he found a gruesome scene. Dan Markel's car window, his driver's side window, was shattered. His glasses and his phone were on the ground next to his car. And Dan Markel was behind the wheel. He was unresponsive and moaning and terribly injured. The neighbor called 911 and law enforcement arrived to find Dan Markel with a gunshot wound to the head. He was taken to the hospital where he survived for about 14 hours before he was pronounced dead. Dan Markel was only 41 years old, and his little boys, who were deprived of their father after this murder, were just 3 and 4 years old. Bless you. Law enforcement began to investigate to try to figure out who did this, who shot Dan Markel. The scene there, the crime scene, left no trace of the killers. There was no fingerprints, no DNA, no bullet casing, nothing was stolen. And so police began to suspect that this may be a professional killing. The little evidence that they do have sends them down two separate paths. One path is to track down that light-colored Prius that the neighbor saw fleeing from the scene. And the other is to identify who was inside that Prius. And the other path relates to motive. Who in Dan Markel's life would hate him enough to hire a professional killer to kill him? And after years of tireless investigation, both of these paths led directly to this defendant. So first, let's talk about the path involving motive. We'll go down both paths this morning. Police investigated Dan Markel's personal life to try to figure out a motive in this case, to see who might want him dead. And they learned that Dan Markel was entangled in a very nasty divorce with his ex-wife, who is the defendant's daughter. And his ex-wife is named Wendi Adelson. A review of the divorce case file reveals that Wendi Adelson had asked the court to allow her to relocate to Miami, where she was from and where her parents lived, with her children and Dan Markel's children, in order to be closer to her mother, Donna Adelson, to her father, whose name is Harvey Adelson, and to her brother, whose name is Charlie Adelson. The victim, Dan Markel, as y'all can imagine, is adamantly opposed to this, to his children being relocated to Miami. He works here in Tallahassee. He's a law professor here in Tallahassee. This is where he lives. This is where his kids have been raised. He wants his children here with him. A review by law enforcement of Wendi Adelson's emails made it clear that her mother, the defendant, hated Dan Markel and was the relentless driving force behind Wendi's relocation efforts to South Florida. And, being a caring and involved parent is great, but the defendant's participation in her children's lives went beyond mere involvement or even meddling. She was extremely controlling. She had very strong opinions about all the decisions in Wendi Adelson's life, whether it be about her career, her relationships, or even purchasing a home. And if Wendi Adelson would not do as the defendant wanted her to do, the defendant often then enlisted Charlie Adelson, her son, Wendi's brother, to solve the problem by getting him to kind of go to Wendi and persuade Wendi until Wendi ultimately agreed to do what the defendant wanted her to do. And while the defendant had always been controlling of her children's lives, the emails uncovered by law enforcement showed that this defendant was desperate to find a way for Wendi and Dan Markel's children, her grandchildren, to be able to relocate to Miami. The defendant told Wendi that she deserved more than just a life teaching in Tallahassee without her family, and that Dan Markel was essentially holding her hostage in Tallahassee because of his job. During the divorce and custody battle, the defendant's email showed that she was heavily involved in Wendi's court case, even going so far as to draft and edit the documents that Wendi and her attorney were filing in court, and emailing Wendi instructions for her attorney on arguments her attorney should make and what her attorney should do. The defendant would guilt trip Wendi Adelson about how much time she and her husband, Harvey Adelson, were having to spend away from their dental practice to visit Wendi and the grandkids in Tallahassee, and complain about how the family was losing income, losing patients because of their constant absences from the practice. And the defendant instructed Wendi Adelson that relocation to Miami was the most important priority in this divorce, and if it had to be her non-negotiable in the divorce. In June of 2013, the judge in the divorce case ended up ruling in Dan Markel's favor. And not only did the judge deny Wendi's relocation motion, but the judge dismissed it in a way that prevented Wendi Adelson from requesting the relocation again. So Wendi would not be permitted to move to Miami to be close to the defendant and her husband with the children at that time or ever, unless of course something happened to Dan Markel. After the judge denied the relocation motion, after that was denied, the defendant told Wendi Adelson in emails that Dan Markel has not beaten the Adelson family yet. She let Wendi know that the Adelson family is a team and they are trying to win. Donna Adelson suggested in her emails several bribes to get Dan Markel to agree to relocation, like plane tickets, paying for her grandson's education. And the defendant even suggested offering Dan Markel a $1 million bribe to allow the relocation, to let Wendi move to Miami with the boys. And if the bribes didn't work, the defendant also suggested several ways that Wendi could threaten or bully Dan Markel into submission. The defendant told Wendi to aggravate Dan Markel like he aggravates you. And the defendant set out a plan of action that the defendant told Wendi would make Dan Markel absolutely miserable. And she's detailing all of these in her emails. So, for the plan of action, the defendant knew that Dan Markel was devoutly Jewish. So she came up with the idea for Wendi to pose Dan Markel's sons for pictures in front of a Catholic church, and then post the pictures to social media, and even announce on social media she was getting the children baptized just to make it appear to Dan Markel that she was changing their religion. The defendant assured Wendi Adelson that this would all be an act to get Dan Markel to agree to let her move to Miami, but told Wendi Adelson that in order to pull off this stunt, she had to put on the acting performance of her life. The defendant said that it did not matter to her if Wendi had to dress her two little toddlers up in Nazi or SS uniforms, as long as she was able to get them to South Florida and show Dan Markel that he was not in control. The defendant repeatedly told Wendi Adelson that the rest of her life, meaning Wendi's life, as well as the defendant's life, Harvey Adelson's life, and Charlie Adelson's life depended on Wendi Adelson and the boys being able to relocate to Miami. And the defendant said that she would never, never, never give up and never stop fighting for Wendi and the boys to be relocated to Miami. And she never did. The evidence in this case will show you that this defendant's closest confidant was her son, Charlie Adelson. She and Charlie Adelson talk multiple times a day, every day. And he was the person with whom she would constantly vent and complain to about Wendi's situation here in Tallahassee, having to live in Tallahassee with her sons. And she would often, the defendant would use very dramatic life and death terms to describe it. The defendant portrayed Dan Markel to Charlie Adelson as a crazy person who was impossible to deal with and was causing an extreme amount of stress to Donna Adelson and her husband, Harvey Adelson. And Charlie Adelson was also the person that Donna Adelson relied on to solve her problems. And her daughter and grandsons having to live 8 hours away in Tallahassee was a big, big problem for this defendant. And this defendant made it Charlie Adelson's problem to solve. And although the divorce between Wendi and Dan Markel was final a year before the murder, throughout that year, litigation is still ongoing, to say the least. Each side is continuing to routinely file violations of the custody agreement, violations of the settlement agreement, and that continued right up until Dan Markel's death in 2014. A few months before the murder in 2014, Dan Markel alleged that the defendant, Donna Adelson, was disparaging him to his children. He was very worried about her trying to alienate him from his children. She was doing this by calling him stupid in front of the boys and telling the boys that Dan Markel was trying to take them away from her. Dan Markel asked the court to prevent this defendant from having unsupervised contact with her grandchildren. And this motion was still pending in court when Dan Markel was killed. And the murder of Dan Markel ensured that not having access to her grandchildren would never be a problem for this defendant. And what do you know? About 48 hours after Dan Markel was killed, after the shooting happened, Wendi Adelson and the little boys relocated to Miami, moved into the defendant's home with her, and the boys started school down the street. And just like that, their father was effectively erased from their lives, and the Adelsons' big problem had been solved. You'll hear during this trial that the Adelson family is a very tight-knit family. The defendant, her son Charlie Adelson, and her husband Harvey Adelson actually all worked together at their family's dental practice. The defendant, Harvey Adelson and Charlie Adelson are dentists there, and the defendant managed their accounts at the office. She was the details person. And this defendant, though, she managed much more than just the office for the Adelson family. She was the matriarch, and a domineering one at that. She ran the office, the home, and the lives of the Adelson family members. After Dan Markel was killed, law enforcement interviewed Wendi Adelson. Wendi Adelson told police, and the police confirmed this, that she was at home having her TV fixed, at her home in Tallahassee, having her TV fixed at the time of Dan Markel's murder. And when police asked her, well, do you know anyone who would have a motive to kill Dan Markel? Wendi Adelson acknowledged that her family had a motive to want Dan Markel dead, and said that her parents had more reason to dislike Dan Markel than anybody else. At one point in the interview, police allowed Wendi Adelson to make a phone call to her parents to let them know that Dan Markel had been shot. And after she got off the phone with her mother, the defendant, Wendi Adelson said to police, well, they acted surprised, so that's a relief. And when asked by law enforcement if anyone could have killed Dan Markel on her behalf, she also told the police about her brother, Charlie Adelson. Wendi admitted to police that her brother, Charlie Adelson, had joked that he looked into hiring a hitman to kill Dan Markel as a divorce present, but decided to buy her a TV instead because it was cheaper. And what do you know? The same TV that Charlie Adelson bought his sister as a divorce gift would be Wendi Adelson's alibi the morning of the murder. An alibi, the TV repair appointment that was set up by her parents, Harvey Adelson and Donna Adelson, the defendant. So this path of looking into Dan Markel's personal life to see who would have motive to kill him leads law enforcement to the Adelsons, including this defendant, a woman who vowed to never, 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 never give up on getting her daughter and grandsons to Miami, and her son, Charlie Adelson, who told his family that he'd looked into hiring a hitman to kill Dan Markel, as Wendi said, was just a joke. But if Charlie Adelson was just joking about hiring a hitman, that joke, that stopped being funny when Dan Markel was actually killed by a hitman. While the police are trying to investigate motive, they are simultaneously following that second path of the investigation by tracking down that light-colored Prius the neighbor saw fleeing from the scene. When law enforcement retraced Dan Markel's steps on the morning of his murder, they uncovered some very chilling surveillance video of that light-colored Prius, fitting the description given by the neighbor, following Dan Markel into the Premier Gym parking lot and waiting for an hour while he was inside, and then following him home from Premier Gym back to Benton Hills. And these surveillance images, coupled with a massive amount of phone and SunPass records gathered in this case, help police track down the exact car used to commit this crime. But police still had to figure out, okay, we got the car, but who was in this car? And why did that person kill Dan Markel? So law enforcement did a painstaking review of digital evidence in this case. And when I say painstaking, finding this Prius and finding evidence in these phone records was not an easy task. And it took much longer than your average investigation of a shooting, as you'll hear. But law enforcement eventually found that needle in the haystack. They found a number that communicated with the cell tower that services Premier Gym at the exact time when the Prius was there. And it was a number with a Miami area code. And that number belonged to a man named Sigfredo Garcia. Law enforcement examined Garcia's call logs, and they saw that he was in frequent contact with another number that was present at Premier Gym that day. And that number belonged to a man named Luis Rivera, who is a longtime friend of Garcia, and he's also from Miami. They both are. Police then looked at Garcia and Rivera's phone records, which showed that their phones left Miami 2 days before the murder, so July 16th. They came to Tallahassee, and on the day of the murder, on the 18th, they followed Markel to Premier Gym. The phone data shows that these men turned their phones off just minutes before the murder took place, and their phones then stayed off for about an hour or so after the murder until they were well southbound to Miami. I think around the Gainesville area, the phones turned back on. And then once they got back to Miami, a bank's ATM camera caught them in the light-colored Prius at a bank drive-through and caught both of the men in the Prius. So police figured out the identity of the two men responsible for following and killing Dan Markel. But they continued to look for evidence to explain why these seemingly random men came all the way to Tallahassee to kill a man that they'd never met. What or who is the connection between the killers and the victim? The defendant in her emails obviously had demonstrated ample motive to want Dan Markel dead, but how do we get from these two random and hired killers to her? Well, those phone records that I talked about, they revealed that one of the shooter, Garcia's, most frequent contacts was a woman named Catherine Magbanois. She goes by Katie. The shooter and Magbanois have a long history of an on-again, off-again relationship, and they share two kids in common. This is Garcia and Magbanois. And lo and behold, These two paths of the shooter's car and the motive, they converge when law enforcement sees that Catherine McBanois is also one of the most frequent contacts in the phone records of Charlie Adelson, the defendant's son, the same son that she had been nagging to death about his sister being stuck in Tallahassee. Law enforcement also learned that at the time of this murder, Catherine McBanois was dating Charlie Adelson. So Dan Markel was a problem the defendant needed to solve. The defendant's son, Charlie Adelson, was looking to hire a hitman to kill Dan Markel. Dan Markel is killed by a hitman. And who ended up being the hitman? The hitman that killed Dan Markel? Someone with a close relationship to Charlie Adelson's girlfriend, the father of her children. So you can see how both paths, followed by investigators, charted the way to this defendant. Not only by looking into the motive, led law enforcement to the defendant because of her hatred of Dan Markel and her son's apparent efforts to hire someone to kill him, but also looking into that car fleeing the scene led law enforcement to the defendant through her son's girlfriend at the time. So 2 investigations, 1 conclusion. Law enforcement also tried to follow the money in this case. And that was a 3rd way that the evidence in this case pointed to the defendant. Law enforcement reviewed bank records, employment records, DHS-MV records of all the suspects, and saw that in the months after the homicide, Garcia, Rivera, and McBanois all acquired some big ticket items. Rivera and Garcia both bought motorcycles and cars. McBanois got a breast augmentation surgery and later received a black Lexus sedan whose previous owner was Harvey Adelson. Catherine McBanois's bank records were analyzed, and there was no check ever written or matching cash withdrawal for the car or the breast augmentation. Bank records also showed that McBanois's account had a huge spike in cash deposits around the time of the murder. She deposited more money in her account in the 5 weeks after the murder than in the entire year before the murder. And this was during a time when there was no record of her being employed anywhere. And also, about 2 months after the murder, this defendant added Catherine McBanois to the payroll at the Adelson family's dental practice, the one that she kept the accounts for, the defendant kept the accounts for. And the defendant started issuing her regular checks from their business account every 2 weeks, despite the fact that she did not work there at the time. McBanois didn't work there. Law enforcement noticed that each one of the 44 checks that were written to Catherine McBanois every 2 weeks over the course of the next 2 years after the murder were signed by this defendant, Donna Adelson. So the money was talking, but what about the suspects? Law enforcement wanted to know what they were saying. In examining the phone records in this case, law enforcement noticed a distinct pattern of communication surrounding important events or dates in this case. The phone calls always went from this defendant to her son, Charlie Adelson, and then from her son, Charlie Adelson, to his girlfriend, Catherine McBanois, and then from his girlfriend, Catherine McBanois, to the shooter, Garcia, and then back the other way, like train cars. They only seem to touch the car directly in front and directly behind them. The defendant never calls her son's girlfriend, Catherine McBanois, or the shooter, or vice versa. Charlie Adelson never calls the shooter, or vice versa. So, if this is a murder for hire conspiracy, as law enforcement suspects, Could it be that the defendant and Charlie Adelson are wisely insulating themselves from the actual shooters by having Mag Benoit act as the middleman? Law enforcement decided to launch an undercover operation designed to clarify who are the members of this conspiracy and how information was traveling within the conspiracy. Police applied for and received court authorization to listen in real time to the phone calls of Charlie Adelson and Catherine Mag Benoit, the people in the middle of this train car. And this is what's known as a wiretap. By this point, though, it was April of 2016. It took about 2 years to do this investigation to find out who was in the car and to get this wiretap going. So at this point, it's been 2 years, almost 2 years since the murder. And at this point, in April of 2016, Charlie Adelson and Mag Benoit are no longer dating. They've been broken up for over a year. Catherine Mag Benoit at this point is actually back together with Garcia. We heard they're on again, off again, and have these kids together. Charlie Adelson has moved on he's had many other girlfriends at that point since Mag Benoit. And Charlie Adelson and Mag Benoit, though, they are still friends. They remain close friends since their breakup, and they're still in regular communication by April of 2016, even though they're not together anymore. Rivera, the second hitman in that Prius, was in prison by this point, doing time on an unrelated charge. And the defendant is happily taking care of her grandkids all day, every day. So all the members of this conspiracy have presumably gone on with their lives, believing they've gotten away with murder. So what reason would they have to be discussing the murder at that point if police are listening in? They wouldn't. So police needed to stage an event that would generate some conversation, some activity between the members of the conspiracy so they could see who the members of the conspiracy were. Their plan was to send an undercover agent posing as someone on behalf of Luis Rivera. He was the hitman who was incarcerated by April of 2016. To walk up to the defendant, Donna Adelson, on the street. There's a fly right in front of me that won't leave me alone. To walk up to Donna Adelson on the street and try to blackmail her for money. Law enforcement refers to this as a bump. So this undercover agent posing as a blackmailer, and this is an actual picture from the surveillance cameras, that this is the undercover agent passing a piece of paper to Donna Adelson back in 2016. This undercover agent is posing as a blackmailer. He hands the defendant a piece of paper, and on the piece of paper is a news article about Dan Markel's murder. And written on the piece of paper is a phone number and the amount of $5,000. He tells the defendant that he knows the Adelsons are taking care of Katie, and he's basically there to blackmail to get more money out of them or out of her on Rivera's behalf to even things out because he knows they're taking care of Katie. He never says Charlie Adelson's name or anything about Charlie Adelson to Donna Adelson. The defendant then puts the piece of paper in her purse and walks away without ever looking at the piece of paper because she knew exactly what it was about. Then law enforcement listens in to see what will happen next. Will the defendant go straight to the police to report the blackmail, or will she do something else entirely? And as suspected, based on the previously observed communication pattern, the first person that this defendant calls is Charlie Adelson, despite the fact that the blackmailer never mentioned Charlie Adelson to her. On that first call, you would think the first thing that Donna Adelson would say to Charlie Adelson is, "Oh my God, so crazy. Some man just came up to me, handed me an article about Danny's murder, and he's demanding money from us." But she never says any of that. In fact, the defendant never says Dan Markel's name at all. Instead, she tells Charlie Adelson that she needs to talk to him in person about some paperwork that was just delivered to her. She said that it involves the two of us, and that he should know what she's talking about. The defendant and Charlie Adelson continue talking, and she says that he should bring cash to their meeting. And she says, the TV is probably about 5. The defendant tells Charlie Adelson that the man who approached her mentioned an ex-girlfriend. The defendant never says which ex-girlfriend of Charlie Adelson. She never says Magbanwa's name to Charlie Adelson in that phone call. She only says that the blackmailer mentioned an ex-girlfriend. Charlie Adelson never asked his mom, my ex-girlfriend? Which ex-girlfriend? He's had a lot. He never asked that. Because as the evidence will show, he didn't need to. He knew the TV is probably 5 meant that she was being blackmailed about Danny's murder, where the TV was the alibi, and he knew that the ex-girlfriend in question was the only ex-girlfriend that he had solicited to find a hitman for him, Catherine Magbanwa. And we know that because after this call with his mother, the defendant, Charlie Adelson, calls Catherine Magbanwa. He does not call his most recent ex-girlfriend or even the one before that. He calls Catherine Magbanwa. And his call to Catherine Magbanwa is the only call he makes to any ex-girlfriend after getting the information from his mother that the blackmailer mentioned an ex-girlfriend. And he hadn't dated her for about 1.5 years at that point. And although they threatened to do it very often, neither Charlie Adelson nor the defendant ever reported this attempted blackmail to the police. You all will hear the calls between the conspirators, and as you listen to these, you'll notice that they're being very cautious about what they say. It's apparent that they're being very careful about the words they use because they are all immediately suspicious that law enforcement could be behind the bump. Law enforcement could be the person who came up to them on the street and gave her the paperwork. And law enforcement could also be listening to their conversations. After Charlie Adelson's first call to Catherine Magbanwa, Charlie Adelson then meets up in person with his mother, the defendant. And in person, she gives him the paperwork that this blackmailer gave to her and makes it Charlie Adelson's newest problem to solve. And naturally, what does Charlie Adelson do? He goes to the next train car, Catherine Magbanwa. Charlie Adelson and Catherine Magbanwa meet in person at a restaurant called Dolce Vita in Miami. And while they sit at their table in this busy, noisy restaurant, an undercover FBI agent is sitting at a table nearby with a camera hidden in a bag, recording the conversation. So this is an image from that video recording the conversation. And in the recording, we hear Charlie Adelson discussing whether the man who walked up to his mother could be an undercover police officer, or he could be someone trying to legitimately blackmail them. And if it's a blackmailer, is it somebody who just saw a way to make a quick buck? Or is it another situation entirely, which would be much worse for the Adelsons? Is it actually someone with inside information about Donna Adelson's role in the murder of Dan Markel? And that person could tell police what they know. Charlie Adelson reassures Catherine Magbanwa, that if it is the police, that is a good thing. Charlie Adelson thinks that, hey, if it's the police, that means the police don't have enough evidence to charge anybody. They're just fishing for information. And in fact, Charlie Adelson tells her, hey, if they had any evidence, we would have already gone to the airport. It's important to note that at the time of this conversation at Dolce Vita, no arrests had been made in this case. And the only thing that police had released to the public at that point was a photo of the light-colored Prius that fled the scene. Police knew at that point that it was Garcia and Rivera who were in the Prius, but the public didn't know that yet. So that fact is interesting in light of some of the things that Charlie Adelson started saying to Mag Benoit. He starts giving her several analogies involving rental cars being used to commit crimes. He reassures her that the police can't prove a person committed a crime just from someone's DNA being in a car that was used in a crime. In order to prove someone committed a crime, you have to be able to put the person at the scene of the crime at the time it was committed. So he's trying to reassure her that even if they identify who rented that car that fled the scene, they still would not have enough evidence to hold anybody responsible for this murder. Charlie Adelson also says that crimes are tough to prove unless someone actually witnessed the suspect commit the crime, or the suspect confesses to the crime, or a suspect is caught on a wire talking about the crime. So he's trying to reassure her about the lack of evidence in this case, about no witnesses, and trying to let her know that, hey, as long as we all stay quiet and nobody confesses or gets caught talking on a wire, then we don't have anything to worry about. And he begins educating Catherine Mag Benoit about how blackmail works. He tells her that, hey, if this is a guy who knows information, there's two ways of dealing with this guy. We could call the police, but then the guy blackmailing us could be charged, and then that blackmailer is going to start talking, and the police are going to be asking questions about what happened. The other option is to pay the blackmailer, but let him know that this is just a one-time thing. And we'll try to scare him off by saying, if you come around again, we'll go to the police. Charlie Adelson gives Mag Benoit very precise instructions on how to deal with the blackmailer. He tells her to call the blackmailer and tell her that my friends, meaning the Adelson family, have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm just going to give you this money as charity, but don't contact these people again or they'll go to the police. And Charlie Adelson said he would give Mag Benoit the $5,000 to pay off the blackmailer who approached his mother, except that he's concerned that this guy won't go away. He'll get that $5,000 and then he'll just keep coming back for more money. We'll see him as an easy target. And so Charlie Adelson then offers that the best solution might be to have the blackmailer killed, and that he's willing to pay whatever it takes. He says, so help me God, if they F with my family, it's going to be Nazi shit, because this will be done. I mean, Katie, I don't care what I spend. And after hearing that Charlie Adelson wants someone killed and is willing to pay whatever it takes to get it done, Mag Benoit then asks Charlie Adelson to help her out. And Charlie Adelson reassures her she'll be taken care of and reminds her she's on salary at the parents' dental practice. After Charlie Adelson finishes this meeting where he's getting Mag Benoit to then solve the problem of the blackmailer, they say goodbye. He gives her a big hug that's captured on camera outside by the FBI. And then Charlie Adelson immediately calls the defendant to let her know everything's fine and he has handled the situation. He does this using some pretty obvious code words that you'll often hear these conspirators use to mask the meaning of what they're talking about in case law enforcement's listening. Mag Benoit then, also using code words, calls Garcia, and she tasks him with calling the number on their paperwork and finding the identity of the blackmailer. And in the series of recorded calls that y'all are going to hear later this week, you'll hear these conspirators talking and using words like TV, relationship advice, false leads, listings, patients, properties, clients, rap songs, CDs, pigs, all these terms that are obviously normal words, but they're used in context that, if you're listening to the conversation, don't make sense. So after that undercover operation was over in 2016, Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia are arrested, and they're charged with the same charges before y'all in this trial. Luis Rivera, who was the second person in that Prius, cut a deal with the state and told law enforcement the truth about the murder of Dan Markel and the people responsible for it. He told police that he was hired by his longtime friend Garcia to help kill Dan Markel. Rivera described how Garcia told him that this was a job that Magbanua was able to get for them, and it was in Tallahassee, and it paid $100,000, and that Rivera was going to get a third of the money. Rivera said that during the trip to Tallahassee, Garcia had a piece of paper with a picture of the man that they were hired to kill and some handwritten notes. And during that trip, Rivera said that the first call that either of them made after the homicide was from Garcia to Magbanua, where Garcia told her that the job was done and Magbanua assured them they would get their money the next day, which they did. That Magbanua brought the money the next morning to Rivera's home. And law enforcement checked cell phone records, which corroborated Rivera's information. Law enforcement told police that the money that he received from Magbanua the next day was packaged in a very unusual way. The money was basically in stacks of 1,000. Each stack was made up of $100 bills that were then stapled together. And after each stack was stapled together of 1,000. And after learning this from Rivera, Magbanua was arrested, and that was in October of 2016. During this trial, you'll hear that the Adelson family had access to a lot of cash because their family gave cash discounts at their dental practice. Like if you paid in cash, you would have to pay less than if you paid on a card or check. And they kept the cash that they received in stacks, and they stored it in a safe. Law enforcement also learned from Charlie Adelson's friends that Charlie Adelson had a very unusual practice of keeping his money in these $1,000 stacks that were stapled together, just like the money Rivera received. And over the last few years, since the 2016 arrests of Garcia and Rivera in May, and then of Magbanua in October 2016, law enforcement has not stopped working on this case. 3 years after Garcia's arrest in 2019, he was convicted at his trial. Law enforcement continued, though, to gather evidence. They continued to interview people who may possibly have information and to clarify all of these recordings the FBI did that couldn't be clearly heard. And thanks to their tireless efforts, in March of 2022, Charlie Adelson was indicted. 2 months later, in May of 2022, Catherine Magbanua's case went to trial, and she was convicted. During Magbanua's trial, Catherine Magbanua took the stand, and she insisted, this is back in May of 22, she insisted she had no knowledge of the murder. The Adelsons must have just gone around her to hire the hitman directly. That's what she testified to. Her defense team insisted that the state's theory was correct about every co-conspirator except for her, for Catherine Magbanua. That Catherine Magbanua was just this victim of bloodthirsty and desperate prosecutors and investigators, and just a victim of this set of circumstances that appeared to prove one thing, but was actually, the truth was something else entirely. However, after being convicted at trial and sentenced, Magbanua finally decided to testify about the plot to kill Dan Markel. and admitted that she was the connection between the Adelson family and the killers hired to kill Dan Markel. Magbanua testified in Charlie Adelson's trial in October of 2023 and said that Charlie Adelson wanted to hire someone to kill his sister's ex because his mom was stressed out over all of the problems his sister was having with her ex-husband. Magbanua said Charlie painted a picture that Wendi's ex was this terrible man causing his mom so much stress that she couldn't sleep or eat. Magbanua agreed to help him and ended up recruiting her children's father, Garcia, and also Rivera to kill Dan Markel. She says that the night of the murder, she went to Charlie Adelson's house to pick up the payment for the murder. And when she arrived, Charlie Adelson said that his parents had just been at the house and that Charlie Adelson had the money for her there. Law enforcement was able to corroborate this claim with phone evidence showing that Donna Adelson went to Charlie Adelson's house the night of the murder. Magbanua then spent the night with Charlie Adelson that night, and the next morning, on July 19th, he put the money that she was to divide up into the trunk of her car. Magbanua says several things about the money stood out to her. She said it was stapled together in stacks of $100 bills and that it was damp like wet. She then delivered the money to Garcia and Rivera afterwards. When Catherine Magbanua said that when she asked Charlie Adelson about the money being damp, he said that his mother the defendant had actually washed the money, and that she and Charlie Adelson kind of laughed about the fact that the defendant had literally washed the money so it couldn't be traced. In Charlie Adelson's trial, Charlie Adelson took the stand, and he testified that Magbanua, Garcia, and Rivera were all in on this crime together, but that the Adelsons had nothing to do with it. They were the innocent ones. He crafted an elaborate story in which Garcia and Rivera came to Tallahassee on their own, killed Dan Markel without his knowledge or his family's knowledge, and then these killers colluded with Magbanua to play he and his mother for fools and extort money out of them. And for many reasons, which will be revealed to y'all in this trial, Charlie's interpretation of the facts was not reasonable to believe, and he was convicted. Charlie Adelson was convicted in November of 2023. And within hours of his guilty verdict, this defendant began to plan to flee the United States to a country that she could not be extradited from in order to avoid being arrested for Dan Markel's murder. The defendant on her phone researched countries that did not have extradition treaties with the United States, and she applied for an emergency visa to Vietnam. She was overheard planning to put her money in trust for her grandchildren, and she and her husband purchased one-way tickets with a fast-track emergency visa to Vietnam. And Vietnam does not have an extradition treaty with the U.S., as she would have learned from her searches. And just days later, she was stopped by law enforcement on the jetway in Miami International Airport, where she was boarding her one-way flight to Vietnam, and she was then charged for her participation in the murder of Dan Markel. After the defendant was charged, law enforcement received information from women who said that the defendant, Donna Adelson, was offering them bribes in exchange for false testimony in this trial. They said Donna Adelson promised them money, housing, veneers, prescription drugs, if they were willing to testify that Catherine Magbanua told them a completely different story about the crime than the one that she would be testifying to. One informant was even able to show law enforcement a script, a question and answer session for a direct examination in trial that Donna Adelson herself wrote, and that Donna Adelson wanted this informant to memorize and come into court and perjure herself by reciting it to you here in trial. Please listen to all of the evidence that y'all are going to see and hear in this trial. I know it's been a long week already, and we have a lot of evidence for you in this case, but when you do, you will see that this defendant conspired with her son, Charlie Adelson, who solicited his girlfriend, Catherine McBanois, to get this murder done. And then this defendant paid her with cash, with checks for the job once it was completed. The defendant acted in furtherance of this murder plot that went beyond just thinking about it or just talking about it. And these acts make her guilty as a principal to first-degree murder, just as if she was the one pulling the trigger in the garage herself. And while the defendant's choices helped solve a problem within her family, they came at a very high price. She took the life of a loving father of 2 little boys and caused a lifetime of grief for Dan Markel's loved ones. And at the conclusion of the evidence in this case, you will be convinced beyond any reasonable doubt that this defendant is guilty. And at that point, we'll ask you for the only verdict that does justice in this case, which is a verdict that this defendant is guilty as charged. Thank you.
All right, briefly approach. Before the defense gives its opening statement, we are going to take a brief break. The bailiff will take you to the jury room. Gallery or the observers need to use the restroom, please do so at this point, so that way when the defense is ready, we can continue moving on seamlessly. We'll resume again at 10:20.
Hey everybody, this has been a very complicated case. Yes, Joanna, the judge, he's not here to play. Can you guys hear me okay? Sarah Dugan did a fantastic job, and I knew she would. She gave the opening statement in the Catherine McBanois, or no, in the Charlie Adelson case, and this is the same judge that presided over the Charlie Adelson case. It was a different judge that did the first two trials, the Hitman and Catherine McManua. First two trials. So he knows, he's very familiar with the facts of this case. This took law enforcement years to sort out. This happened back in 2014, and it was 6 years, I think, before any arrests were actually made. It took a long time to put all the pieces together. They had to get toll records, they had to get camera footage from all over town, they had to get cell phone records. It was so complicated. And the name that you did not hear during the opening statements, but maybe one time, is the unindicted co-conspirator, Wendi Adelson. I keep waiting for her trial. I keep waiting for her arrest. It's just not happening. She's also a lawyer. She was married to Dan Markel. She's the mother of the two boys that seemed to be the reason Grandma wanted. What are you doing? This cat is playing with a cord. She actually lives with the boys now in Colorado. They don't live in South Florida anymore. And she will be testifying in this trial. Wendi Adelson will be testifying in this trial under an immunity agreement. She will have immunity. Anything that she says during the trial will not be used against her. So this immunity is so that she won't get up on the stand and claim, the Fifth Amendment, the right not to answer the questions. So she'll have to answer the questions, but it doesn't mean she won't ever be tried. They can still try her. They just can't use whatever she's going to say during these trials. And she's testified at every one of these trials. And her testimony has always been so interesting. She does eye rolling. She does this controlled breathing so she doesn't lose her temper. And I dare say she's not in the courtroom right now. She's probably nestled up in Colorado until they need her, and then she'll fly down to Tallahassee. But so crazy. This case is just crazy. Joanna, get out of that grocery store before you eat everything in sight. Now she's over the Italian gelato. Now I was running a few minutes behind, so now on this break we're caught up, we're current. She summarized that thing in just over an hour, which is incredible. It's such a complicated. I was thinking about this last night. Why has Netflix not put together this case? This would be a series that would rival most. It's a true crime series that would be so good. This is how I learned about this case many years ago, probably going back 5-6 years now. Wondery had a podcast called Tally, and you have to pay to listen to that podcast now. Back then it was free. And that's how I learned about this. This was back before any of the trials had occurred. And it was so interesting. This has everything you'd want. This has hitman, this has murder, this has conspiracy, a greedy grandmother. Oh, girl, get out of the Halloween candy corn. After you buy the candy corn, then you can get out of the Halloween aisle. But you have to have candy corn for Halloween, girl. You're so funny. Oh, my word. I'm going to remove this until they come back. So you get the full flavor of my face. There you go. Ta-da! We have every time I see this pink, I'm like, it just makes me happy. The kids now are, well, that was 2014. So 10 years, 11 years ago. So they're teenagers now. I think they're 16 and 17, something like that. The other person they keep showing in the courtroom, they do keep showing the skinny guy. That's Harvey Adelson, the father. He's married to Donna. And they keep showing Dan Markel, mother. Oh God, forgive me, I don't know her name. She's such a sweet person, really, really vocal about this case. What, 200 Ghirardelli in one box, add to cart. You gotta get out of that store. Oh my God, you are so funny, Joanna. Don't take Joanna shopping with you. She go buy the candy aisle. Yeah, that's what your Halloween display is lacking. Candy corn. You got to get like a clear jar and put some candy corn in it. And, because that's part of Halloween, right? Anyway. So, yeah, if you have questions about, or if you're confused, you're probably not alone. Sue says candy corn is gross. What? You know how I like to eat my candy corn? Mix it with peanuts. Get some plain peanuts, like some salted peanuts, and mix it with the candy corn. Oh, it's so good. But yeah, Sue thinks candy corn is gross. That's funny. Okay, I'm just sitting here diamond painting while this is going on. I'm going to have this live up throughout the day today. I will be breaking down different parts and putting up various videos during the day of different parts of the trial. I will do a recap of this tomorrow. Cashews. Candy corn is happening. There she goes. And you put cashews in with the candy corn? Is that what you're saying? I don't know about that. I like it with the peanuts. I'm not sure about the cashews. Cashews are expensive. They're like gold. I'm not kidding. Yeah. Well, okay. They're late coming back. They're not back yet. Let me make sure. I don't want to tell you something wrong. Nope, they're not back yet. Okay. The grandfather had to know since he was going to fly the coop. I think he knew, he had knowledge, but I don't know that he was an active participant to the extent that Grandma Adelson was. $20 for nuts. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So the reason they have so much money, Sue, is Daddy Adelson had dental practice, a very successful dental practice. And then Charlie, the one that's sitting in jail that's been convicted already, he was a periodontist. And he was, they travel. They go from practice to practice. And this is what he did. He would go to different practices depending on where he was needed as a periodontist. And he made a lot of cash. But at one time, I think he bought the business from his dad and gave it back to his dad. It's complicated, but anyway, they're back.
Clarification needed about what was discussed at the sidebar.
Okay.
Not at all, Your Honor. All right, very good.
Maybe not. Oh, no, there he is.
Back in, so it's probably going to be some.
I hope the volume's good today.
Musical chairs, whatever your variation is of that.
I like this judge. So, let's see who's there. There's a guy from Dateline or 2020. You see him over there on the left. That's pretty cool. Behind that woman in the blue, you see a guy, one of the Dateline guys. He's there. I don't know if he's Dateline or 2020 or one. He's one of those guys. He's a network reporter. Oh, I see a court TV lady back there. Interesting. Chantel, good morning, honey. All right, we're waiting. What you've missed is the opening statement of the prosecutor, which I will put up as a separate video so you can catch up on that. Right now, we're getting ready to hear the defense's opening statement. I can tell you right now, she's going to be saying that she was just protecting her son. She didn't want her son to get in trouble. That's what I think her defense is going to be. Oh my God, what is this cat? He's on crack, this cat, this morning. He just flew out of the room. He loves the pink too. All right, I guess we're waiting for them to go get the jury. Haven't been in line for a while. I have been good. I have a new studio. I think you can see that. It's pink. I painted a wall pink. I'm in a different area of the house now because my sinuses were going crazy in that other room, and this room is way more comfortable and healthy to be in. And I think it looks better too. To have the frame stuff behind me. Got some Legos going over here, but that's different. Oh my God. Wait till you guys see. I'm going to move the Lego display to over to here where you won't see it unless I show it to you.
Will be a thing throughout the trial.
But I ordered the most incredible flower and a vase that's going to go really. This vase is to die for. That's going to go where the Lego display is. This vase looks like diamonds. And then it'll have these like pink flowers coming out of it. Oh, it's going to be incredible. That'll be here on Sunday, I think. That's what I used my YouTube money for this month. Yes. Always doing improvements. Yes. Anyway. I am trying to bling this painting here. It's not easy. I'm trying to choose colors to bling it with. Right now, I'm trying to get something to go with this ugly brown. Okay, that's Harvey. I don't know who the other guy. Wait a minute. No, I'm confused. That's either Dan Markel's father or Harvey. No, I don't think that might be Harvey right there. I think that's Harvey. So who was the other skinny guy they were showing? I don't remember. That was Harvey that they just showed. I am working on a painting called Magical Christmas. It's a snow globe and there's a snowman there and it's like a little house in the background, and it's AI. It's Eau Claire Studio, Diamond Art Club. But it's for my Great Escape event that's going on, which is any place you want to go that's Christmassy. Like, who doesn't want to live in a house where there's a giant snow globe out in front? That's where I want to live or escape to. So, all right. I guess we are still waiting. There are 15 jurors. Let me explain the bathroom situation here. There's 15 jurors. They're all trying to get some coffee down. They're all trying to go to the restroom. And there's probably only one restroom in the jury room, I suspect. So this is what the holdup is, I think. Why does she need headphones? Not sure. I don't know if they're doing sidebars at the bench or from the tables. I don't know if they're technology wise where they're at. I think with that, she can hear the sidebars that occur, and she doesn't have to get out of her chair to go listen. I think. She's not looking terrible for being in prison. She's been in prison now, or jail. not prison. She's been in jail for 2 years since she tried to flee with her one-way ticket to Vietnam. Okay, I don't have my phone in front of me. I was going to show you that vase. Oh my gosh. What is going on, people? All right. Now we have a black screen. Huh, interesting. I don't think I have Amazon on my iPad. Let's see. I don't think so. Oh my God, yesterday I ordered this thing from Temu. And I'm watching. I'll make sure that you don't miss anything. I ordered this stand to keep my iPad on, here. And
was a professor.
That was
He
interesting.
Worked very hard.
A camera
earned
glitch.
Lot. What he did not earn was for somebody to do this to him. You're going to hear that Wendi Adelson, the daughter of my client, was married to Danny. And I'm not trying to be informal when I say that. I respect Mr. Markel, Dr. Markel.
I honestly think that's Dan Markel's father.
Refer to him as Danny. I'm going to do that if that's okay. But I don't mean any disrespect by doing that. More important to Danny Markel than anything in the world were his little boys. He had 2 little children when this happened to him, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. When the divorce first happened, when Wendi moved out, he did not want the divorce. That was in 2012. And they squabbled during the divorce. They did. Each side argued for their side. The other side argued for their side. That's what happens to divorce. Divorce is not fun. Divorce is not usually friendly. Some of us have had friendly divorces, but not everybody does. And a lot of things were said. But moving forward to 2014 is where we're going to concentrate on, because that's when Danny was killed. And in 2014, with these little boys that he had, the divorce had been over for a year. Relocation, the opportunity, even discussion about it, ended. On July 31st, when the final judgment was entered, relocation was over. The state told you that. The court denied it with prejudice. She could never raise it again. Nobody was fighting anymore about where these little boys would be. Danny advocated for not only himself in the divorce, he advocated for his children. They are an important part of his life. He wanted as much time as he could get with them. They ended up splitting the time equally between Wendi and Danny. Their schedules changed a little bit on how they worked that out, but it was 50%. This bug is driving me crazy too. What in the world is that? Sorry. He continuously, from the time Wendi moved out till the time that he was killed, spent as much time as he could get with his children. He loved being with them. If it wasn't his time to have the children, he would go to their little preschool and spend time with them there. He wanted to talk to them on the phone as much as he could. You guys are way younger than me, so maybe you don't even know about this, but I guess there was a thing called Skype. I don't even know if it still exists, but I guess it's like FaceTiming, but doing it on your computer. And that's how he wanted to talk to his kids, so that he could see them when he wasn't with them while he spoke to them. Now, at 3 and 4, it's kind of hard to wrangle them to sit down in front of a screen. So Danny came up with a really good idea. When he Skyped the children, it would be most of the time after the kids had had their dinner and had their baths, where they're kind of calmed down. They're not in their little running around state. And he would read bedtime stories to them. And he didn't have his little kids. He still wanted to know that when the children went to bed, they didn't forget about Daddy. And he made sure that didn't happen. These kids are not deprived of their father. Their father was brutally taken from them. Not just when they were 3 or 4, or 5 or 6, or 7 or 8, but up into their teens. They lost the opportunity because someone took it from them to grow up with a father, to have his involvement and influence in their lives, to talk about what he did as a kid and share his experiences. All of that was stolen from him. That's very important. This Skyping that he did with his kids, Mrs. Adelson, when she had the little boys, actually arranged so she could do that with him. And she would keep the kids in front of the screen while he talked to his children. You've heard a lot about how she hated him. She said some ugly things during the divorce. Pretty foul things, actually. But you're going to learn through the evidence why that was occurring and how she was actually interacting with Danny. They're two very different things. I want to talk to you now about my client, Donna Adelson. She is a normal person, just like all of us. At the time that this happened, she was 64 years old, married to her husband, Dr. Adelson, a dentist. Now they've been married 54 years. It was somewhere in the 40-year range when this happened 11 years ago. And she got up in the morning and went to work, not at her and Harvey's business, like you were just told. She went to the business owned by her son. Every morning, they got up and they went to work. She did the books, she kept the books, she greeted patients, she got charts out. At 7:30 every morning, she was there and organized and had everybody ready to go because they had a little staff meeting. So everybody could know what to expect, what patients they were going to see, what they were going to take care of. She was there working, sometimes late into the evening, just like all of us. She's a normal person. People who know Donna will tell you that she is not the person that the state is portraying her to be. She's kind, caring, loving. She cares more about people than she does about herself. Now, what happened on July the 18th of 2014? You've heard the state describe it, but I want to talk about it for a minute. The state is going to be able to prove to you some of the things they were talking about. Can everybody see it okay? No? Oh,
Clearly. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. So the state told you that he got up every day, just like he normally did, on July the 18th of 2014. And I just want to say this also. Throughout the trial, you may hear me say that he was murdered on that date. Somehow he survived for another 11 hours. But in my opinion, all the evidence is going to show that what killed him took place on the 18th, and he was just able to survive long enough into the next day. So on that date, July 18th of 2014, these two men, Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera, followed Danny all over town. Started at his house, followed him to the school where the little children were going to school, the preschool where he dropped them off, watched him drop those kids off, followed him to the gym, waited outside the gym for him, followed him to his house, pulled up in the driveway. Mr. Markel is talking on the telephone to someone, and he notices someone's coming into his driveway. And while he's talking on the phone and says something about needing to see who this is, he turns and looks in the direction. And this man, Sigfredo Garcia, is holding a revolver. And he points it at him. And you may hear testimony that there's some evidence that maybe he tried to, well, you know what you do in defense when somebody's going to hit you or whatever, you put your hands up. He saw this man pointing a gun similar to this at him. And in that instant, I cannot fathom how terrified he must have been when this man shot him. Not one time, but twice. One of the shots is almost right between the eyes. He was brutally murdered by this man. This man, Luis Rivera, who you've heard them mention in the state's opening, traveled with this car. This is an actual picture of the car, and the state's going to show it to you. This is the Prius that they were traveling in. This is surveillance photo that the investigators were able to find to know that it was a Prius that they were looking for. This man supplied the gun and drove the car following Danny, drove it up into the driveway less than 3 feet away from Mr. Markel, whose engine is still running, and he's on the phone, and he waits while this man kills him. He hears the shots. This guy, Mr. Garcia, runs back to the car where Mr. Rivera is in the driver's seat, and he's the getaway driver. Supplies the gun, knows what they're going there to do, kill him, and drive off. They drive off. The state can prove that about Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera. But they're not on trial here, right? You heard they've already been on trial. Then you're going to hear, as the state said, that they can prove that, everybody can see okay? They can prove that Katie Magbanawah, her name's Catherine, some people call her Katie, they can prove that she's the one who set it up. This is the father of Katie's children. This is his buddy that was recruited to go along on this trip to kill Danny. They can prove that she arranged these guys to do it and that she's the one who paid them the money that was in stacks, stapled, $100 bills, all $100. Well, there may have been something other than $100 bills, but each stack was $1,000, stapled together. And you're going to hear testimony that that's exactly what he did with his money. He kept it and saved it for a long time. And you're probably going to hear testimony that this happens on July 18th. And on July the 19th, Mr. Adelson, Charlie Adelson, which is her son, gave approximately between $130,000 and $138,000 that he had in his safe that he collected and stapled together. His money went to her, not Miss Adelson. They can prove and have that he paid her to get them to kill Danny Markel. That's what they can prove. And they've done it 1, 2, 3, 4 times. This case is really a lot about theory and motive and not evidence. The state has a theory, and for the past 9 to 11 years, in fairness, probably 9 years, they have told the whole world that Mrs. Adelson was the reason that this happened. Mrs. Adelson was the reason that this happened. They've told this story, and it's outrageous. It gets people's attention. It's made a lot of money for the media, interviews, specials. Some people in jury selection said they had watched these specials. Lawyers on there, investigators on there. They made a lot of money for the media, and it got big attention because this is outrageous, what happened. It is truly outrageous. But what's more outrageous is, without any evidence, only motive and theory, they put her at the top of this pyramid. She's the matriarch. She's the matriarch mastermind behind Danny being killed. And they don't have evidence of that. That's what's outrageous. It's outrageous that he got killed, but it's also outrageous that we're sitting here with a jury and you're going to hear a lot of theory, a lot of motive, and a lot of what they believe the evidence means. They don't get to decide that. The evidence is what the evidence is. And I ask you to patiently sit here and really pay attention to all of the evidence that you hear, every witness that they put on, every piece of evidence that they present to you, all of it. Don't, for 1 second, I'm not asking you to ignore any of that. Please listen to all of it closely. Look for what they actually have as evidence that Mrs. Adelson planned. She planned Danny Markel's murder. That she engaged these men to kill him. And that she gave the money to her son to give to Katie to pay them. You won't find evidence of that. The evidence about the $3,000 a month, I have that here on this board, $3,000 a month. Charlie Adelson gave $2,000 a month, and he instructed his mother, for reasons you're going to learn in the trial, out of his business account to put her on payroll. She worked for him and she paid that money. It's this man's money, not Donna Adelson's. At the end of listening to all of the evidence, we're going to have an opportunity to make closing arguments. And the judge is then going to give you, well, he's going to give it before, he's going to give you all of the instructions on what it is that you have to decide. Did the state charge and then prove that Mrs. Adelson committed a conspiracy? Not one of the elements, all of the elements, proven by evidence, not theory, not motive. For each count, then solicitation, all the elements. So while you're listening to the evidence, you don't know what those elements are, but think about what each thing it is that the state has alleged. She planned it. She got people to do it. She intended that he die. That this woman wanted to take away the father of her grandchildren for the rest of their life because of relocation that happened a year ago and was done and over. And at the end of the case, because there's not going to be evidence that she did this, keep an open mind. Listen to all of it. We're going to ask you to find her not guilty of every single count. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fulford. Ms. Zellman, if you could take down the easels at this time. Is the state prepared to call its first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The state calls James Geiger. May I reposition the lectern, Judge?
Geiger, please raise your right hand to be sworn, sir. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
You may take your seat. Please speak loudly and clearly for the jurors. You may examine the direction.
Yes, sir. Perfect. Thank you. Please say your name and spell your name.
My name is James Geiger, Geiger.
Sir, where do you live?
I live at 2122 Trent.
How long have you lived at that residence?
It's getting pretty close to 50 years now. I think 48 or 49.
All right. I want to take you back to July 18th of 2024. Now I've got an ad on me. Do you recall something unusual that happened that day? I'm sorry, I said 2024, 2014, sir. You know what case we're here about. Do you remember what happened on that date?
Yes, I do.
All right. Could you please tell our jurors how something unusual first got your attention?
It was a Friday morning, about 10:30. My wife and I were sitting in our living room, looking out towards Trescott Drive, out to the street. And as we were sitting there, we were doing something with our iPads, and we heard a noise, a popping, loud sound, bang sound. And we immediately got up and walked to the front. We have a big picture window. Walked up to see if we could determine what had happened and where it had come from. We weren't sure it was to the right or to the left.
All right,
And
let me pause you right there and show you a couple photographs that I have as marked as states 1, 2, and 3.
okay,
Do you recognize these photographs?
yes, I
sir?
do.
Are these fair and accurate photographs of your residence at that time, as well as the view from the window you've described?
Yes, it's true.
Judge, at this time, I ask to admit 1 through 3 and publish.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
States 1 through 3 are admitted.
If we could publish states 1, please. All right, sir. So if you could just explain, give me that pointer, please. What we're looking at in this photo, and I've got a pointer here. If that's of any assistance to you, push the middle button, you get a red dot. You don't have to use it. Oh, if you are going to use it, though, use it on the big screen, please, sir. All right, so just describe what we're looking at in this photo, states 1.
This is taken from Trescott Drive. The house on the right is my house, and the house on the left was Danny's house.
Okay, and the bay window that you've described, is that what is pictured in this portion of the photo right here? Yes.
That's correct.
Publish states 2, please.
As I looked out.
Okay, and the driveway that we can see there on the right side of the window, is that Dan Markel's driveway?
Yes, it is.
All right, so you've described that something got your attention. Can we have states 3, please?
Well, as I mentioned, I wasn't sure where the noise had come from. And I looked to the left and to the right, and as I looked to the right, there was a car headed down in that direction towards Benton Road. It caught my attention because it seemed to be going so fast. And I noticed what it looked like, and that caught my attention, although quite frankly, it was out of the corner of my eye. It appeared to be a Prius, a light colored Prius, maybe silver or white.
Okay. So something got your attention. What was that?
Well, that was what got my attention. And then
Was the vehicle itself?
excuse me?
Was the vehicle itself or some noise preceded you seeing the vehicle?
Well, initially we had heard this loud noise, which we weren't exactly sure it was. It could have been a gunshot. We weren't sure. And then when I saw the car back out, that prompted me then to walk next door. There had been in the neighborhood a few break-ins, burglaries, and my first thought was that somebody was trying to break into the Markel house. And so I went out the front door and walked across over to Danny's house to see if anything had been damaged, maybe tried to be broken into the garage or something.
Yes, sir. When you looked out, you said you saw the car back out and then exit toward Benton Road. Would that be going this direction to the right of the photograph or toward the left of the photograph?
It would be towards the right.
Okay, so out this way. And you said you walked over there just to sort of look around, make sure everything was okay. What did you see?
As I approached his garage, I noticed that the garage door was open. His car was inside and the motor was running. And so I thought then, well, I guess so much for a burglary. I don't think that's happened if Danny's there. So I turned around and walked back to my house.
Okay. What happened next?
After that, I can't tell you why, but I just stood at my front window and looked out and waited for a few minutes, maybe 3 or 4, up to 5. And for some reason, it just didn't quite seem right. Danny hadn't backed out. And I thought by this time he should have backed out of his driveway, and he didn't. And so I said to my wife, I think something just seems wrong. I'm going to walk back over. And so I did that.
All right. And what did you see when you got over there?
Excuse me?
What did you see when you got over there the second time?
Well, when I went back the second time, I noticed that the garage door was still up. The car was still running. And this time I thought, maybe I better walk on into the garage. He's probably in the driver's seat. He's probably on the cell phone talking, but I just wanted to make sure everything was okay.
Yes,
And
sir.
so I walked into the actual driveway then, and I saw that the driver's side window had been shattered, and I stepped on glass at that same time. As I looked inside, I saw a bloody head, and the head was slowly moving back and forth, rolling back and forth, left to right. And I hollered immediately, "Danny, what happened?" And I didn't get any response other than the head rolling. And so I hollered again, Danny, what's happened?" Still nothing. And at that point, I knew that I had to get the emergency medical team there as quickly as I could. I reached into my pocket to pull out my cell phone, which is where I normally keep it. And it wasn't there. And I thought, gee, I've left it back on the couch at the house. So I quickly dashed back to the house, got the phone, and called 911.
How many minutes do you estimate elapsed between the time you saw the Prius backing out, or really I should say the time you heard the loud bang, to the time that you were able to reach 911?
Less than 10 minutes, more than 5 minutes, somewhere in there, I would say.
I'm going to approach and show you what I've marked as state's exhibits 4, and then I also have 6 and 7. This is number 4. And I'll draw your attention to some initials on number 4, and then also 6 and 7.
Mhm.
Do you recognize these photos?
Yes, I do.
All right, Judge, at this time, I'd ask to move into evidence 6 and 7.
Any objection?
No objection.
States 6 and 7 are admitted.
Publish state 6, please.
You may.
Sir, is this how the vehicle was positioned when you went over there and found Mr. Markel so badly injured?
Yes, that looks correct.
Publish state 7, please. Was the doors to the vehicle are open in this photograph? Were they open or closed when you went over?
No, they were all closed.
Okay, closed, and the only window that was damaged was that the driver's side window?
That's the only one I saw. That's, if there were some others, I didn't look at any other windows. I just simply saw the driver's side that was completely shattered.
All right, yes, sir. And State's Exhibit 4, is this consistent with the type of vehicle that you observed in the driveway backing out that day?
Yes, it was, although I didn't quite see that angle.
Okay. Judge, at this time, I'd ask to introduce States 4.
Objection to States 4.
No objection.
Admitted at this time.
All right, and you described it as a light-colored Prius. You weren't exactly sure of the color, maybe white, maybe silver, right?
Yeah, silver came to mind first, I guess, but certainly a light colored vehicle.
I'm going to approach and show you States Exhibit 5. Recognize States 5?
Yes,
Is that Mr. Markel?
yes, it is.
May I introduce States 5? Your
No objection. States 5 is admitted.
Publishing States 5. What did you know about Mr. Markel?
Well, this occurred in 2014, and Danny and Wendi were newlyweds and had moved in about 5 years earlier than that. They moved next door. We were not particularly close to either one. We would see them occasionally out on the street. The memorable thing, and the other neighbors would tell you, is that when they first moved in, they had a housewarming event and they invited all the neighbors in, and we attended it. That was our first time to see them and visit them. They seemed like a nice young couple, and but after that, we weren't particularly close.
Did they have a couple little children living there?
Well, when they first moved there, they didn't, but after a year or two, they had a first child and then later a second child.
All right, and at the time that Mr. Markel was shot, had his wife, Wendi, moved out? Had they separated?
Yeah, we had understood that they were going through a divorce, and Wendi had left, and after that, we rarely saw Danny, and I don't think we ever saw the kids either, but
Were you familiar with Mr. Markel's profession?
yes, I knew that he was an attorney. Both of them were, and they were connected with the FSU Law School, I believe, but I didn't know their exact positions there.
Yes, sir. Publish 4 again, please. Are you able to tell the jurors anything about the occupants of this vehicle on that day?
No, I only saw it just briefly, and to notice what kind of car it was. I couldn't tell you who was inside. The windows were dark as far as I could see. I didn't even know if it was 2-door or 4-door. I just didn't see anything like that.
During the time that you were present at the scene of the shooting, did Mr. Markel ever regain consciousness or ever say anything that you heard?
No, I never heard him say anything. The only notion was that his head kept rolling back and forth during the 911 call, which it took forever to try to get the emergency vehicle there, the emergency medical team. They would occasionally ask if he was still breathing. And I would walk back up into the garage and his head was moving still. And I said, well, his head's moving. So I assume he's still breathing.
Yes, sir. Have you had an opportunity to review that recorded call that you made to 911 that day?
Yes, I have.
All right. And was it a fair and accurate recording of that call?
Yes.
All right, Judge, at this time, I'd ask to move into evidence states 88.
Any objection?
No objection.
States 88 is admitted.
May I publish?
Go ahead.
What's your emergency?
It's right next door at my house, which is 2122 Trescott Drive.
Can you repeat that for verification?
2122 Trescott Drive, the T.
Okay, the phone number you're calling from?
I'm calling from 850-2.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
We heard a loud bang and a car pulled away from next door. I came over and looked in, the garage door was up. And I thought the gentleman was backing out, and I went back to my house, but he never backed out. And I came back over, and his driver's side window was shattered, and he's battered, and can't answer. He's inside. I don't know if somebody tried to shoot him, or if he shot himself, or what, I don't know.
And it was at this location, correct?
Right next door. I'll give you mine. I don't know if the address is next door.
Okay.
He didn't send an ambulance in a hurry. He's still alive. He's moving.
Okay, what's going on with it?
I don't know. The driver's side window was all bashed in. He's inside. The car is flooding, and he's got blood all over his head. He's not responding to me. That number, by the way, is 211-2116.
All right, that's the first few minutes of a 14-minute call. Is that how long it took them to get somebody to you?
Seemed to me a lot longer,
Seemed like 14 hours, didn't it?
long time.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination for Mr. Geiger. Mr. Geiger, you may step down, sir. Is he released from his subpoena? Will anyone need to recall him for any purpose?
He's released, Your Honor.
Have a good day, sir. Please call your next witness.
State calls David Sims.
Judge, before he's just asking me approach, please.
Please approach. Please raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth? I do. You may take your seat. Please speak loudly and clearly for the jurors.
Sir, please introduce yourself and spell your name.
David Sims, SIMS,
How are you? Go ahead.
retired sergeant from Tallahassee Police Department,
How long were you with Tallahassee Police Department?
28 years.
Okay. And were you employed with them back in 2014?
Yes,
Did you respond to a scene in response to a 911 call 2116 Trescott Drive on July 18th of 2014?
yes, I did.
Is that location in Leon County?
Yes, it is.
All right. And do you know what time you were dispatched to the call?
I was not dispatched. I was actually at the station working on paperwork, and I heard the call go out, so I just responded.
Okay. And were you the first or?
First on scene.
You were first on scene.
Yes,
And did you make contact with Mr. Geiger, the neighbor?
yes, I did.
And did Mr. Geiger indicate something going on in the garage next door to his residence?
Yeah, he said his neighbor. He thinks it was his neighbor in there, and he heard a loud noise, and there was broken glass in his car.
All right, I'm gonna publish states 7, please. That's in, right? Yeah. Has the vehicle been moved from the position it was in when you first arrived?
No,
Okay, other than the doors being open, right?
correct.
Okay. When you got there, was the vehicle running?
Yes, it was.
All right. What did you do when you first arrived and observed the vehicle?
I walked up to the driver's side window. Mr. Geiger had told me that the homeowner's name was Daniel, and I saw someone in the car, and I spoke his name and said, Daniel. There was no response, and I got a little closer and found that the driver's side window was broken kind of at an angle. Some of the glass was in, some had come out, but there was also a small rounded spot in that glass that was still in there. I said, Daniel, again, no response. He was slumped over and kind of gasping for air, and it was just a sucking sound. I noticed that he had a set of eyeglasses. Half of a set of eyeglasses was laying in his lap. He had a cell phone in his left hand. He had a business card in his right hand. I walked around to the other side of the car. Well, first I reached in and unlocked the door, and I went around to the other side, and I opened the door and reached in and shut off the car, so the car wasn't still running. And then I noticed the other half of the eyeglasses laying on the floorboard of the car. I
Let me
removed
pause you there and approach and show you what I marked as states 8 through 10.
Yes. Yes.
Are these 3 photographs fair and accurate representations of how the vehicle appeared that day?
Yes.
Judge, I'd asked to introduce states 8 through 10.
No objection.
States 8 through 10 are admitted.
Publish 8, please. All right, can you got a pointer. Show us what you're talking about as far as the way the window was?
Part of it had broken out, part of it was still intact, but right there looked like a little rounded area.
All right, and was this void, large void that we see in the window there before the door was opened?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so you said you were able to reach in and unlock.
Yeah, I
car.
reached in, the door was closed. I reached in through that broken area, unlocked the car, and then ran around and entered from the other side to pull out, turn off the car and pull out the keys.
All right, and during this time was EMS already en route?
Yeah, I could hear them. I could hear them coming down the street. They were almost there.
Okay, and were life-saving efforts made to try to help Mr. Markel?
Yes, I when I was on the passenger side, I pulled out a gym bag or something that was in there and pulled it out and set it on the ground so they can make better entry into the vehicle to extract him.
Okay. And did he ever regain consciousness or say anything during the time you were
Not
there?
in my presence.
All right. Publish 9, please. Publish 10, please. All right. Do you see the half part of the eyeglasses there in that photograph?
Yes.
Could you indicate with your pointer?
Yeah, we're right there.
And is that where you observed them, or had they fallen out?
They had fallen out. One was in his lap and then one was on the floorboard on the driver's side.
All right. And what about the cell phone that we see pictured to the left of the
That
eyeglasses?
was in his left hand.
Was there a safety search done of the house?
Yes, after EMS was removing him, then myself and a couple other officers, we took the keys that were in the car. The person door from the garage into the house was locked. We unlocked that, did a search of the house, found no one, nothing amiss.
Any indication that this was a burglary, a robbery?
No,
Any obvious signs of a struggle?
no.
No further questions.
Cross-examination for Mr. Sims. You may step down, Mr. Sims.
This
Yes.
witness is released, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please call your next witness.
Joanne Maltese.
raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
You may take your seat. Please speak loudly and clearly for the jurors.
Please introduce yourself and spell your name.
My name is Joanne Maltese. Joanne, Joanne, and Maltese, Maltese.
Are you employed, ma'am?
Yes, I am.
Are you employed as law enforcement, in law
No,
enforcement?
I am retired Tallahassee Police Forensic Specialist.
How long have you been retired from, it's Tallahassee Police Department, right?
Yes, a little over 8 years.
What were your duties when you were employed there?
Duties as a forensic specialist is the documentation, collection, and preservation of evidence at a crime scene.
How long did you do that type of work?
Done that work for probably 15 years.
Okay. And were you doing it back on July 18th of 2014?
Yes.
As part of your job, did you respond to 2116 Trescott Drive on that date?
Yes, I did.
Right. And what was your job once you arrived at that particular scene?
That particular day, I was called to document and collect evidence at a crime scene.
Publish 10, please. Is this the scene that you're referencing?
Yes, it is.
All right, I'm going to approach and show you states 11 through 17 as well. Just have you look through those and tell me if you recognize them.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize them?
I took these photographs at the scene.
All right, Judge, at this time, I'd ask to move into evidence states 11 through 17.
11 through 17 are admitted.
Publish 11, please. Publish 12, please. Did you collect the eyeglasses shown in State's Exhibit 12?
Yes, I did.
That appears to be half of a pair of eyeglasses. Did you collect both halves?
Yes, I did.
I'll show you what I've marked as states 121 and 122. Do you recognize those?
Yes, I do.
Are those the two halves of eyeglasses collected from this crime scene?
Yes, they are.
Judge, at this time, I'd ask to move in evidence states 122 and 123.
Any objection?
There you are.
States 122 and 123 are admitted.
Publish the next exhibit, please. Did you collect this eyeglass lens?
Yes, I did.
Where was it located?
I believe that one was the floorboard of the driver's area.
Was there another piece of eyeglass lens also collected by
Yes,
you
there
that
was.
day?
Yes, there was.
Okay, where was that piece found?
That was the other optical was on the driveway, or I'm sorry, the garage floor right below the driver's area.
Showing you 123 and 124. Are these the two pieces of lens that you collected that day?
Yes.
Move into evidence 123 and 124.
Any objection?
There you are.
States 123 and 124 are admitted.
Did you take any swabs or attempt to get any fingerprints from the scene?
Yes, I did.
And what efforts were made on those fronts?
I processed the entire exterior of the vehicle for fingerprints. There was an area that was lifted, but it did not have fingerprints of value to compare. As far as the swabbing, all of the exterior and interior door handles, as well as a phone that was collected, and the doorknob from the garage to the interior of the house.
What were the results of those efforts?
Those I would not know. It'd be sent to FDLE lab for analysis.
Did you find any fingerprints of value to send to FDLE lab?
No, I did not.
Publish states 14, please. Approaching with states 125. Do you recognize 125?
Yes, I do.
What is this item?
This is going to be a brown wallet with its contents that were found in the glove box of the vehicle.
All right, and did the wallet contain Dan Markel's driver's license?
Yes, it did.
And in the exhibit, there's no cash, but there's some cash pictured in the photograph.
Yes.
Was there cash that was seized as well?
Yes, there was.
All right, so based on this, didn't appear there was any effort to take Mr. Markel's belongings.
Correct.
Okay, any evidence that the house was broken into or anything was taken from the house?
Not that I could determine.
Publish state 16, please. And 17. And then back to 16, if you would. What efforts were made to document this? What is it that we're looking at?
We're looking at the front driver's door window that was shattered with a hole in it.
Okay. And what did you do to try to document this?
The glass was very fragile because it was broken. So prior to doing anything to it, besides fingerprinting, I would have put clear tape on both sides, the interior and the exterior, just to hold it in place for transportation and collection.
I'm approaching with what I've marked as states 126. Is this the glass that you were able to remove from the vehicle?
Yes.
Is it in the same or substantially the same condition as when you seized it?
Yes.
Move into evidence states 126.
There you go. There you go. States 126 is admitted.
Publish.
Right.
And the glass evidence, is that consistent with a gunshot?
Yes, it is.
All right. Did you, as part of your job, have an occasion to photograph Wendi Adelson's vehicle?
Yes, I did.
Was that done the same day that you collected this other evidence?
Yes, it was.
Where did you photograph her vehicle?
Her vehicle was towed to the Tallahassee Police Department.
I'm going to approach and show you what I've marked as states exhibits 18 through 21. Do you recognize 18 through 21?
Yes, I do.
Are those the photos you took of Ms. Adelson's vehicle?
Yes.
Move into evidence 18 through 21.
Any objection? There you are. States 18 through 21 is admitted.
Publish states 18, please. Publish 19. Publish 20. What is this item?
This was on the front passenger seat of the vehicle, and it is a bottle of alcohol and a receipt.
All right. And did you take a closer photo of the receipt? States 21, please.
Yes.
And what does that show about when the alcohol was purchased?
On 7/18 of 2014 at 12:49 from ABC Fine Liquor and Spirits, or Fine Wine and Spirits.
Did you also go to the hospital?
Yes, I did.
What were you asked to do at the hospital?
Document and collect any evidence.
At the time that you responded to the hospital, was Mr. Markel deceased or still alive?
He was still alive.
I'm going to approach and show you what I've marked as states exhibits 22 through 24. Do you recognize these exhibits?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize them?
I took those photographs at the hospital.
Are they fair and accurate photos of how Mr. Markel looked that day?
Yes.
Move into evidence, states exhibits 22, 23, and 24, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
States 22, 23, and 24 are admitted.
Publish 22, please. This is how Mr. Markel appeared,
Yes.
and this was done on the 18th.
Yes. Yes.
Publish the next exhibit, please. This is 23. Why did you take this photograph?
For the darkened area on his forearm.
Why was that of significance?
That is consistent with stippling.
What is stippling?
Stippling is being close contact to a firearm that was discharged, and it's going to be the unburnt gunpowder and gases that leave the barrel of a gun at a high velocity, and it will tattoo or stain the skin.
States exhibit 24, please. Is this another effort to capture that stippling that you observed?
Yes.
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
No questions, Your Honor.
Very well. Ms. Maltese, you may step down.
This witness is excused, Your Honor.
Please call your next witness.
The state calls Dr. Clark.
Dr. Clark, please raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
You may take your seat.
Thank
you. Please speak loudly and clearly.
Sir, please introduce yourself and spell your name.
I'm Dr. Anthony J. Clark, Anthony J. Clark, Clark.
How are you employed?
I'm currently employed as Associate Medical Examiner for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Division of Forensic Science in the Central Regional Office in Macon, Georgia.
What are your duties there?
I work as an Associate Medical Examiner. I perform what's called the autopsy and forensic autopsies and death investigations.
Was there ever a time that you worked here in Tallahassee as an assistant medical examiner?
Yes.
What time periods did you do that?
It was from 2007 to 2023.
All right. And how many autopsies have you performed during the course of your career?
It's over 8,000 now.
And what is the education and training that you have that qualifies you to do that type of work?
I obtained my Bachelor of Science degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I did 2 years of animal research before moving on to Jefferson Medical College in Philadelphia. I graduated from the college and then traveled over to New Britain General Hospital in New Britain, Connecticut, and did a 2-year general surgical internship. I then went to the Hartford Hospital in Hartford, Connecticut, did 4 years of anatomic and clinical pathology. I then traveled from that program down to Atlanta, Georgia, where I did a 2-year forensic pathology fellowship at the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office in association with Emory University. I am board certified in anatomic and forensic pathology. I have medical licensures both in the state of Georgia and Florida.
Have you ever testified as an expert in the area of forensic pathology?
Yes, I have.
How many times?
Several hundred times.
Tender Dr. Clark as an expert in the area of forensic pathology, Your Honor.
Does the defense wish to voir dire the witness?
No, Your Honor.
Is there any challenge to his ability to provide an opinion?
No, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, the witness will be permitted to testify before you today in the form of an opinion in the fields of both medicine and forensic pathology. You may continue.
Doctor, did you conduct the autopsy of Dan Markel?
Yes, I did.
When was that conducted?
We performed it on July 19, 2014, and we started at 11:55 hours.
Where was the autopsy conducted?
At that time, we were in the Tallahassee Memorial Hospital morgue.
Did you take photos as part of your autopsy?
Yes, I did.
Would use of those photos assist you in your testimony?
Yes, they would.
Would they assist the jury in understanding your testimony?
Yes, they would.
States 25 through 34. Take a moment to look through those and let me know if you recognize them.
Yes, ma'am.
Are they fair and accurate photographs that were taken during the autopsy of Mr. Markel?
Yes, they are.
Moving to evidence states 25 through 34, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
States 25 through 34 admitted at this time.
Publish 25, please.
Before you publish, if the parties can briefly approach. A brief break before we continue with the examination of Dr. Clark. The bailiff will take you to the jury room. Seated. Mr. Zellman, Ms. Fulford, if your client needs to use the restroom, this would be a good time to do so. still going to the bathroom? Check on them. State, you may resume with your examination of Dr. Clark at this time.
Publishing 25. And doctor, you should have a pointer. All right, explain what we're looking at in states 25.
As part of the examination, particularly in gunshot wounds, we like to know whether the bullets are still in the body or how badly they are broken up, etc. So we do X-rays, and this is an X-ray of the head. You can see the top of the head here, the jaw, right side, left side, and these really bright spots here and here are the bullets that we recovered from this individual. They come out because they're very dense. The X-rays bounce off and turn them white here, just like bone. It's fairly dense. These are the bullets here, here, and here.
Published states 26, please. How many bullets were in Mr. Markel's head?
There were 2 bullets in his head, and you can see on this one here that hit the left cheek, actually fragmented a little bit. And then we had a bullet inside the head, back to the left side, right side, excuse me, right side.
States 27. What are we looking at here, doctor?
This is actually the identification photograph of the individual. We like to get them cleaned up. We'll put the identifying tag underneath their chin, the case number, the date, and usually my initials. And you can see that there has been quite a bit of damage here, particularly in the left side of the face. We have a gunshot wound here that's labeled number 1 in the autopsy report. And this is number 2, labeled number 2 in the autopsy report.
By labeling them 1 and 2 respectively, are you opining that that's the order in which those shots were fired?
No, the numbering system in the autopsy report is just for me to discuss during the trial.
Publish 28, please. What does 28 show?
So this is what I call gunshot wound number 2. And you can see it's quite irregular. It's not a nice round hole you'd like to see, but the way it hit the bone, it caused a lot of damage and tearing in this area here. You can see that there's some what we call raccoon eyes or hemorrhage around the eyes. There's quite a bit of swelling going on here. Also in this area here, you see a lot of minor superficial abrasions that vary in size. Some are a bunch bigger and some are small. You can see it's all over the cheek here, so and the ear and in the side of the neck here. This is what we call pseudo stippling, and this usually happens after the bullet goes through a door or a window or hits concrete and causes those items, the glass or the wood or the concrete to splinter and cause small particles to fall out, to shoot out and hit the individual's skin. So this isn't true stippling, which is due to gunpowder. We'll see an example of that in a minute. But so we have large areas of pseudo stippling around the left side of the face, the left side of the neck and ear.
So each of those small red injuries represents a piece of glass striking?
Piece of glass, yes, ma'am. Or part of the bullet that fragmented off the main part of the bullet.
States 29, please. What does this one show?
Again, we're looking at the left side of the neck here. Here's the left ear. You can see that this pseudo stippling is quite extensive. Also, you'll see that there's kind of a purplish discoloration here because of where the bullet track went to. It caused a large amount of bleeding into the left side of the face, where you saw that huge distortion of the left side of the face and then drain down into the neck.
States 30.
Okay, this is going to be gunshot wound number 1. It's right between the eyebrows, closer to the left eyebrow. Again, it is distorted, it's not a nice little round hole because of the shelf of bone that's there. It's called the glabella. So it causes an irregular entry wound. And now we're seeing a much finer area of stippling across the forehead here. This is much different from what we're seeing on the left side of the face. This is true stippling or gunpowder stippling from the barrel of the gun directly.
How does firing a gun cause this pseudo stippling?
The stippling.
Sorry, stippling.
Okay, when the firearm is discharged, out of the barrel comes the bullet, of course, hot gases, soot, burning and unburned gunpowder. What causes the stippling is the burning and unburned gunpowder. It actually it's a particulate that strikes the skin and abrades it. It doesn't burn it, but it hits it and abrades it, or scrapes it. So that usually with a handgun, we can see the stippling out to about 18 to 24 inches. This to me looks a lot closer than that, but all we're seeing is the stippling here.
So the presence of this evidence suggests that the muzzle of the gun was quite close to Mr. Markel's head when it was fired.
Yes, I'm thinking inches. Yes, ma'am.
States 31, please. What does this show?
Okay, this is giving you a perspective of the two gunshot wounds here. What I call labels 1, what is label 2, the pseudo stippling on the nose, the fine stippling on the forehead, the hemorrhage around the left eye, part of the raccoon eye pattern.
States Exhibit 32.
This is the left forearm, and what you see here is kind of a ring of soot, partial ring of soot here, and some stippling on the forearm here too.
What is that consistent with?
That to me is suggested that arm was up near the gun when it was discharged. That's at one point in time. And most likely the one gunshot wound that went to the center of the head here, that arm was up in a defensive type thing or a reaction type thing. And the soot and stippling is actually not from the barrel, but when you're talking about a revolver, you have a cylinder where the bullets are. You have a space between the cylinder and the barrel. It's called a cylinder gap. And soot and gunpowder can come out of the cylinder gap and cause this kind of pattern.
So again, consistent with the firearm being very close to the victim?
That's correct.
And also, is it consistent with the victim at least having enough wherewithal of the impending danger to raise his arm in defense?
In my opinion, yes, ma'am.
Right. And you said that the number that you order the shots for purposes of your reports does not necessarily mean that's the order of the shots that were fired in this case. Do you have an opinion as to which shots were fired in what order?
Yes, after discussions with the investigators and looking at the scene photographs, the first shot went through the closed car window. So the first shot would have been to the left cheek area, which traveled from the left cheek just before the left ear, hitting soft tissues, fracturing the jaw, fracturing the left cheek bone. Again, this is maybe slightly incapacitating, maybe stunned him, but would not immediately put his lights out. Okay, so that is where all the pseudo stippling is coming from that glass shattering. Glass is not there anymore. The second shot is to the forehead where the actual gunpowder can strike the skin and the hand was raised somehow into the vicinity of that cylinder gap.
And that's the second shot is the one that was not survivable?
That's correct.
And was there any amount of medical attention that could have assisted Mr. Markel, say, if it had gotten there sooner?
Well, these are pretty devastating injuries, particularly the gunshot wound in the brain.
Did you collect the projectiles from Mr. Markel's head?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to show you States Exhibit 127 and 128. If you will publish 33, please. Ask if you recognize 127 and 128.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize those?
These are the envelopes that we place these bullets in with the identifying marker labels and where they were from. Both ones from gunshot wound number 1 and ones from gunshot wound number 2.
Are they in the same or substantially the same condition as when you collected them?
They appear to be so, yes, ma'am.
Move into evidence 127 and 128, Your Honor.
And that's, there you go. States 127 and 128 are admitted.
And And is this a photograph of one of these projectiles removed from Mr. Markel's head?
Yes, ma'am. This is the one from gunshot wound number 2 to the left cheek area. If you remember on the x-ray, it had kind of a barrel shape to it. I don't remember, but you see the barrel shape here.
And for the record, that was 33, now publishing 34. What does this show?
This
Would
is
you be able to turn it? Upper left, maybe. Again. Thank you. What's
This is the
show?
bullet that we pulled from the right side of the brain. And the x-ray is getting a little pretty deformed. You can see that we taken one picture, one aspect of it here. Here's the identifying label.
What is meant by the term cause of death?
That is how that person died.
All right, and is it part of your job as assistant medical examiner to determine a cause of death?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you able to do that in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
What was the cause of death?
Got gunshot wounds of the face and head.
And what about manner of death? What's meant by that term?
Manner of death is how what were the circumstances that eventually led to the death.
And do you have an opinion as to the manner of death?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
Homicide.
No further questions.
Cross-examination, Dr. Clark.
No, Your Honor.
Judge, this witness can be excused, and this might be a good time to take our lunch recess.
Very well. Dr. Clark, you may step down, sir. Have a good day. Members of the jury, we are going to take our lunch break at this point. As you have been previously instructed, I'm just going to remind you again, you are not to discuss this case with each other or any other person. During your lunch break, you may eat together if you choose to. Again, you may converse about any manner of things, but this case. Does everyone understand this instruction? Please raise your hands. And for the record, the jurors have raised their hands. Please return at 1:15. Enjoy your lunch break.